Hello and welcome to Context. I'm James Ezimoha. We turn today to the Gaza Strip, where Israeli forces have intensified their operations, targeting what they say are key Hamas strongholds. Tel Aviv claims the offensive is necessary to dismantle militant infrastructure, even as civilian casualties arise and aid deliveries stall. Meanwhile, ceasefire proposals remain stuck in mistrust, with Hamas announcing it has accepted a deal only to be rejected by both Washington and Jerusalem. Joining me today is Jorge Torres Pereira, former Portuguese ambassador from Lisbon, Portugal. Today, we'll examine Israel's current military objectives, scrutinize ceasefire diplomacy, and explore the legal and humanitarian challenges. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Now, let's start with why. Why is this offensive seen as essential by Israeli defense planners?
Well, I think what is at stake here is a kind of idea that total victory could be achievable or attainable, which I think it's probably a fallacy. We still are in this moment where some planners believe that they can supposedly eradicate completely the Hamas movement. And of course, in the process, we have been having all these terrible side effects, collateral damage, humanitarian suffering, and so on.
Now, what does Hamas gain from claiming to accept ceasefires only for it to be dismissed by others?
Yes, there are contradictory information about what is the real status nowadays of the so-called negotiations that are taking part in Qatar. There are apparently some movement, but immediately not confirmed. Like just a few days ago, the American envoy denied that there was such a progress. I think we are in this kind of stalemate where we kind of think that some ceasefire could still be on the horizon, while at the same time the military operation goes on according to this idea of somehow attaining what I think is an impossible total victory.
Now, are ceasefire talks a genuine path to peace or just a posturing for global sympathy?
Well, it's not easy to really know what would be the outcome of the different pressures that we see nowadays. We have to take that into consideration. Even the Prime Minister of Israel recognized that he had to do something on the humanitarian side because some of his friends in the United States were deeming it unacceptable, the stopping of arrival of humanitarian aid. These pressures from different actors, the most recent one, I think very significant, is the Prime Minister of Germany, who is, of course, for historical reasons, a very important supporter of Israel. Merz himself said that there were things that could not go on. So, coupled with the reactions of other important actors, namely European leaders that are starting to reconsider some aspects of the economic relationship with Israel. The Irish foreign minister announced that they were going to make legislation that would take would make impossible to export produce from occupied colonies in the West Bank to be exported to Ireland. What I'm trying to say is all these pressures combined might have an effect, together, of course, with the together with the pressure from the families of the hostages, which, of course, are a very important part of the influence on trying to make things progress. So, to answer your question directly, I think there is a lot of cosmetics when you think that there are negotiations going on, but in any case, the outcome of ending the war is something that is focusing the attention of almost everyone.
Now, what safeguards exist to, sorry to cut you, what safeguards exist to protect civilians when conflict zones are this densely populated?
Well, of course, international law and humanitarian law and practices normally ensure that at least it's really minimize the risk for civilian populations in a conflict area. We know that this has been extremely difficult to achieve in Gaza, with the population having to move from one place to the other, the new security zones, new instructions from the Israeli military, making it very difficult, and together with how difficult it has been to achieve the minimal conveying of humanitarian aid. Of course, it's difficult to say that the normal safeguards are in place.
Now, does Israel face legal exposure under international law for attacks on shelters?
Well, if we want, there are a number of situations that we believe that have crossed the line of what is considered war crimes and what is the normal behavior in a situation like this. Of course, Gaza is a very special place. I've been there a couple of times, and I can imagine that the kind of operation in a larger territory is something, and in a very narrow strip of land with that kind of demographic density, of course, is a nightmare for the population. And the only thing that can better a little bit is, of course, the cessation of the war.
Now, speaking about Gaza, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been heavily involved in aid deliveries in the Strip. What is the humanitarian impact of their food delivery strategy in Gaza?
Well, you are raising a point that has been discussed thoroughly recently, which is this idea that there should be alternatives to the aid delivered by the usual traditional United Nations linked programs and agencies. I think the fact that the CEO of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has resigned in itself is significant. As you know, the United Nations are not satisfied that the proposed alternative way to convey aid is the most appropriate for different reasons. And of course, this is also another point of contention. But if you want, if I might expand a little bit, I think we are paying enormous attention to the humanitarian situation. We are paying enormous attention to the military operations by themselves, but in a way, this is hiding the fundamental issue, which is a political one, which is the political aspirations of the Palestinian people. And nobody is talking about the day after in Gaza anymore. And it's the political resolution of the situation in both Gaza and the West Bank that should continue to focus our attention. Of course, the humanitarian situation is terrible and needs to be addressed. Of course, the military operation and what is meaning for the day-to-day life in Gaza is awful. But I think we should really underline the importance of a political outcome for everything that is happening.
Now, how are Western governments balancing support for Israel, especially with calls for a restraint?
Well, there is an interesting, for me, following on what I just said, that it's important to not to take our eyes off the ball of the political resolution. I think there is an important development, which is the fact that some countries that were very reticent to go the extra step and recognize the state of Palestine, for the first time, they are considering it. As you know, most countries in the world actually recognize the state of Palestine, but the Western democracies is not the case. Although in Europe, roughly 1/3 has already done it. Most recently, there was the examples of Norway and Ireland and Spain that recognize the Palestinian state, and it's significant because Oslo is probably the European country who knows better what's going on in the situation of the Palestinian-Israeli issue. Spain is a very important actor in the Mediterranean. Ireland has an enormous curriculum in defending human rights. I think the time has come to offer that symbolical gesture. I say symbolical because obviously the situation doesn't change as by miracle if we decide to recognize the state of Palestine, but I think it will offer the Palestinian population some kind of sign that the political aspirations are not forgotten.
Now, from within the country, what is Israel's perspective on mounting international criticisms?
Well, from what I understand, there is a radical difference between the Israel I knew when I was in the region and the Israel now. One of the main differences is that there is now a very large majority, 2/3 probably, that don't want to even hear about a two-state solution. It's a minority that still proposes that the only way out of the problems, security and otherwise of Israel would be to go along with achieving what was promised, not only in Oslo, but what was promised by the United Nations when the partition of the mandatory Palestine was done. I think that is what is lacking in our thoughts. We are trying to deal with a solution, but we know that the public opinion in Israel, we know that the main political actors in Israel are not really on that frame of mind.
Now, can these operations succeed without a full reoccupation of Gaza?
Well, we really don't know what is going to happen in the next couple of weeks or months. I still think that the ideas that were suggested on how to deal with Gaza after the active battle terminating, namely how the reconstruction and how the administration of Gaza could take place, where Hamas will not have a role to play at all. Those ideas are still there. So there will be a moment where the military logic, the war logic, will no longer function, and we have to be prepared to actually begin seriously to consider how, in practical terms, and with the help of various actors, the reconstruction can begin.
Where does this leave regional diplomacy, especially with Egypt, Qatar, and the US?
I think, I'm very sorry. I think there are a number of actors that will have a very important role. Some are the traditional ones, like the ones who are directly involved in the negotiations for a ceasefire. Egypt will still be an extremely important actor to kind of play on his particular historical and traditional relations with all factions of the Palestinian movement. There are other actors that are very important too, that are not in that, let's say, core of the negotiations right now, but they will be very important. One can remember, of course, Saudi Arabia, although the idea that there would be a kind of grand deal where the recognition of Israel by Saudi Arabia would be the prize for the Israeli accepting the two-state solution. It's a little bit out of the table right now, because in fact, after the visit of President Trump to Riyadh, most of the things that we thought were part of the deal have already been, let's say, decided bilaterally between the United States and Riyadh. So in that sense, Israel was left a little bit out of the picture, and it was something that we thought that would be important as a form of pressure on the Israeli government. But there are other actors that are of course very important in the region. Turkey is one of them, and I think there will be a need for really a very sustained international work in order to achieve something that would bring security and peace to the region.
Thank you for sharing your time, Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
As the war drags on, civilians continue to bear the brunt. Israel vows to destroy Hamas, but talks have stalled and trust has crumbled. With no truce in sight, this remains a battle fought not just on the ground, but in the minds of the watching world. That was Context. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to AnewZ.